The blast thundered through the air as black smoke billowed from Lincoln Elementary School in Boise, Idaho. The crowd panicked, but Elias Kane, an old man dismissed as the drifter, plunged into the flames, guiding each student out of the choking smoke. His tattered coat fluttered, and the scar on his arm glowed in the firelight. No one expected the church's elder to be a former SEAL from the Nighthawk Firestorm mission. One badge, one secret, and one heroic deed will bring you to tears. Watch until the end and share. Do you know a hero like Elias? Snow fell like shattered memories, blanketing the road leading to River's Edge Cafe in Boise, Idaho, where the morning bustle pulsed like the city's heartbeat. Elias Kane, a man in his 70s, sat alone in a corner, cradling a cup of cold tea, his eyes clouded as if gazing through a distant trench. His military jacket, threadbare and patched in haphazard places, made him the target of disdainful stares. Sarah, the young waitress, swept by with a sharp frown, annoyed that Elias occupied the old wooden table for too long and blocked the incoming rush of customers. A group of students in shiny coats pointed and laughed, their mocking voices echoing like a biting wind. He was a drifter, a ghost who didn't belong in vibrant Boise. Elias bowed his head, his thinning gray hair hiding the pain etched in his gaze. His hand quietly slid to the silver badge, concealed beneath his coat, the inscription, Nighthawk 07, as cold as a blade-piercing memory. By the Boise River, Elias's rented room was tiny and dim, just enough space for a rusted bed and an old wooden box where he kept the fragments of a life forgotten by the world. Inside the box lay a crumpled, leather-bound journal, a few faded photographs of young soldiers grinning under a desert sky, and a scrap of paper scrawled with Operation Nighthawk Firestorm, Kandahar 2003. Elias had never let a word slip about those days, allowing Boise to see him as invisible, limping through the snow, burdened by a loneliness as heavy as a soldier's pack. He came to River's Edge each morning, not for the bitter tea, but for the chatter of patrons, the only thing that eased the echoes of explosions from Kandahar, where fire and smoke still burned in his mind. That day, just as Elias set his cup down, a horrific blast shook the ground like thunder ripping through the winter sky. Black smoke billowed from Lincoln Elementary School, several blocks away, an unforgiving reminder from the past. Panicked crowds flooded into the cafe, shouts of a gas explosion piercing the air like alarm horns. Sarah froze, her hand trembling as she dropped a tray of glasses. Shards of glass shattered across the floor. Customers pressed against each other, faces ashen with fear, whispering about the children trapped inside the school. From the cafe's shadowed corner, Elias rose. His eyes, once clouded like the winter frost, now gleamed with the steel edge of a warrior. Without hesitation, he shoved the wooden chair aside, cut through astonished gazes, and bolted outside toward the roiling smoke. His tattered coat whipped in the cold wind like a long-buried battle standard resurfacing. The crowd murmured, unable to believe that the old man they had despised would charge headlong into life and death. Could a man deemed homeless truly confront the flames and rescue anyone?
Welcome to Veteran Best Stories, where the war ends, but the stories live on. From the foxholes to front porches, we honor the silent battles our veterans still fight. Subscribe and walk with us beyond the battlefield.
Black smoke curled up from Lincoln Elementary School like a nightmare from the past, rising over the Boise, Idaho sky where a gas leak had turned the corridors into a crematorium. The screams of students and teachers echoed sharp as battle sirens piercing the dense smoke. Firefighters had not yet arrived, and the crowd outside could only stand frozen in fear, powerless before the roaring flames. Elias Kane, the old man they called the Drifter, in his tattered coat, charged into the building with unwavering steps despite his silver hair and limping gait. His coat billowed like a faded battle flag, leaving the onlookers stunned. No one could believe that the man chased out of River's Edge Cafe would dare cross the line between life and death. Sarah, the young waitress, ran after him, her eyes wide with shock. Elias turned back, his voice low but commanding, ordering her to fetch water and keep the door open like a field commander. Sarah complied in silence, her hand trembling at his sudden transformation. Elias wove through the smoke-filled hallway, the acrid fumes stinging eyes like those desert winds in Kandahar long ago. His gaze was icy and focused, with no trace of the slow tea-sipping elder he appeared each morning. The instinct of a warrior, honed through long nights in Afghanistan, surged within him, guiding him past the blazing walls. He found a group of students huddled in a classroom, faces smudged, eyes red from smoke and terror. With astonishing calm, Elias knelt down, his voice warm and steady, as a breeze calming a storm. He removed his coat, soaked it with the bottle of water Sarah had brought, and shielded each child, leading them to crawl low through the hallway to avoid the deadly smoke. 8-year-old Tommy gripped his hand tightly, feeling the rough scar on Elias's wrist. In that fleeting moment, the boy's eyes caught the silver badge peeking under Elias's collar, the inscription, Nighthawk 07, gleaming in the firelight. Tommy whispered in a trembling voice, asking if he was a soldier. Elias replied simply, "Follow me, son," his eyes seeming to look through the smoke toward a distant battlefield. Outside, Luke Carter, a retired Marine officer, stood motionless, his gaze locked on Elias. The way Elias moved swift, precise, like a dance practiced 1,000 times stirred memories of a story Luke had heard in Afghanistan. "Nighthawk Firestorm," he whispered, breath-catching. He had been told of a legendary SEAL petty officer who saved his team from an explosion in Kandahar in 2003, pulling comrades from the rubble despite taking shrapnel to his own arm. Official records said that man had died in the mission. Yet when Elias led the last child out of the building, the Nighthawk 07 badge glittering in the flames, Luke felt his heart tighten. The scar on Elias's arm, the way he commanded in the smoke, there was no mistaking it. The old man Boise had dismissed as homeless was the hero Luke believed lost forever. The crowd began to applaud, but Elias only bowed his head, coughing harshly, his coat singed at the edges. Luke stepped forward, eyes burning with resolve. He would restore the truth to Elias. Could the Nighthawk 07 badge be the key to uncovering a buried secret? Dear viewers, stay tuned for the next part that will leave you in awe. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see someone joining us from around the world. Elias Kane sat silently on the curb, his breath heavy and interspersed with raspy coughs from smoke filling his chest. His tattered coat, singed at the edges, clung to his gaunt frame like a shield burdened by too many wounds. The crowd gathered around, hesitant applause rising and falling as if they could scarcely believe that the old man branded the Drifter had just led 12 students and a teacher out of the jaws of death. But Elias only bowed his head, wiping sweat from his brow with his sleeve, his gaze clouded as though staring into a distant battlefield. His hand quietly slipped the silver Nighthawk 07 badge back beneath his coat, hiding a secret too heavy to bear. The long scar on his wrist, now exposed in the dim light, told a story Boise had never known. Sarah, the waitress from River's Edge, rushed over, her face pale, eyes brimming with remorse. She stood before Elias, lips trembling, to apologize for having driven him out of the cafe so many times for her cruel taunts. Elias offered only a sad smile, as cold as a desert wind, and whispered that he was merely an old man who loved his tea. Yet his eyes, deep as an unfathomable abyss, betrayed a pain beyond words. the anguish of a man who'd stood amid gunfire and been forgotten by the world. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving Elias alone with that shattered teacup in their memories, except for one middle-aged man whose eyes remained fixed on him. Luke Carter, a retired Marine officer, stepped forward toward Elias with slow, determined strides. His gaze burned with respect, as if he'd just reclaimed a lost piece of his past. Elias's movements through the smoke, his calm command under fire, and that glinting badge awakened a memory Luke had heard of during his days in Afghanistan. "Nighthawk Firestorm," Luke whispered, his breath catching as though pulled back to 2003 in Kandahar. His task force had been ambushed in an abandoned factory where an explosion buried 6 soldiers beneath shattered concrete. A SEAL petty officer with a scar on his arm had clawed through the rubble with bare hands, pulling each comrade from death's threshold even as blood from a shrapnel wound soaked the ground. That mission was classified, the records wiped, and the hero declared lost. But now, looking at Elias, Luke knew he was none other than Petty Officer Kane, the living legend of Nighthawk Firestorm. Luke had served as the communications officer during the operation, burdened with remorse for never finding the man who saved his team. 20 years later, he still kept a scrap of paper bearing the name Elias Kane, from the classified report a personal vow to restore his honor. Quietly, he pulled out his phone and contacted Nathan Cole, a former SEAL comrade now working as a military journalist. Nathan's voice trembled over the line when he heard the name Elias, the legend who refused medals to protect his teammates' secrets, the man forced out of the service, living anonymously on the brink of oblivion. Luke stood before Elias, fists clenched, determined to bring his story into the light. He invited Nathan to Boise, where the truth would finally be revealed. Elias, still seated, coughing harshly, had no idea that the scar on his arm was about to awaken an entire community. The crowd continued to murmur, but now their eyes held a spark of curiosity, as if recognizing that this old man was more than a mere ghost. Could Elias's scar and his Nighthawk 07 badge tear away the 2-decade veil of secrecy? Inside, the warm golden lights illuminated eager faces from the community, gathered to thank Elias Kane, the old man once driven away, now praised for saving 12 students and a teacher from the gas explosion. Elias, in his singed, tattered coat, quietly wiped down a table in the corner of the cafe, his eyes clouded as if still lost in the memories of Kandahar. The crowd murmured, their glances a mix of curiosity and regret, unaware that this evening would be forever etched into Boise's heart. The cafe door swung open, and a rush of cold air swept in, heralding the arrival of 5 men in distinguished SEAL uniforms, their badges gleaming under the lights. Luke Carter led them, followed by Nathan Cole and 3 other veterans from the Nighthawk Firestorm team. Elias froze, his hand halting mid-wipe, the rag dropping to the floor like an awakened memory. The soldiers, now with streaks of gray in their hair, stepped forward, their eyes filled with respect and the pain of 2 decades apart. Nathan, voice choking with emotion, approached Elias, his hands trembling as he rendered a military salute, a sacred gesture, an unbroken vow. The entire team saluted in unison, tears streaming down the faces that had once faced death alongside Elias. The crowd fell silent, their breaths caught in their throats, sensing the weight of this moment. Luke stepped forward, eyes burning with fervor, and began to recount Kandahar in 2003. In an abandoned factory, the Nighthawk team was ambushed, a blast burying 6 soldiers beneath shattered concrete. Elias, then a SEAL petty officer, led them through the hail of bullets, clawed with bare hands through the rubble, and pulled each comrade free even as shrapnel tore into his own arm and blood stained the ground. The scar on Elias's wrist, now revealed under the cafe's lights, stood as a silent testament to his unwavering loyalty. That mission was classified. Elias was forced out of the military, his record scrubbed clean, left only with his Nighthawk '07 badge and an oppressive loneliness. The crowd, who had once dismissed him as a homeless drifter, fell motionless, their hearts tightening at the truth unveiled. Sarah, the waitress who once frowned and shooed Elias away, stood in a corner of the cafe, her eyes red and her hand covering her mouth to stifle sobs. She felt remorse cut through her like a razor's edge, slicing away all the mocking words of before. Tommy, the 8-year-old boy Elias had saved, ran up on stage holding a drawing. Elias standing amid flames, the Nighthawk badge blazing like a torch. He placed the picture in Elias's hands, his eyes shining with trust. Elias bent down, offering a sad smile as cold as a desert breeze, and gently smoothed the boy's hair. Nathan, now a military journalist, stepped forward and announced that he had published an article in Military Times complete with video filmed by a parent showing Elias rescuing the students through smoke and fire. That video, in just a few hours, had gone viral on X and TikTok, amassing millions of views, with the hashtag number #NighthawkHero igniting inspiration across Boise. The crowd erupted in applause like crashing waves, yet Elias stood still, his gaze drifting into the distance as though he could still hear the voices of his comrades from Kandahar. In that moment, under the cafe's lights, it was not only recognition for Elias but a collective awakening of the entire community. Those who had once turned their backs now looked at him with reverence, their hearts moved by his silent courage. Luke and Nathan stood beside Elias like soldiers guarding a flag that would never fall. But would Elias's story end here in Boise, or reach even further? Could the light from the Nighthawk badge kindle a legacy beyond time? Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or grab a drink of water, then stay tuned for the rest of this surprising story. Comment 1 if you're enjoying it, so we know you're still here. The footage of Elias Kane rescuing the students captured by a parent during the gas explosion spread like wildfire across X and TikTok, with the hashtag number #NighthawkHero amassing millions of views and awakening an entire community. The gleam of the Nighthawk '07 badge in the video, flickering amid smoke and flames, became a torch illuminating a forgotten past. That viral surge compelled the U.S. Navy to take notice. They reopened the Nighthawk Firestorm file, a classified mission in Kandahar in 2003, during which Elias, then a SEAL petty officer, had saved 6 teammates from the rubble, even as blood from the scar on his arm soaked the desert sands. At a modest ceremony on the banks of the Boise River under a bleak gray sky, Elias stood quietly in his threadbare coat, his gaze distant as though still listening for comrades from 2 decades past. A Navy officer in pristine white uniform stepped forward, holding a commemorative plaque inscribed with Elias Kane and the words "Nighthawk Firestorm, Eternal Loyalty." The crowd, once the same people who had mocked him at River's Edge, stood shoulder to shoulder, their breaths held in the cold air. When the officer invited Elias to receive the Medal of Honor, he shook his head, offering a sad smile like a breeze across a battlefield trench. He whispered that honor did not lie in medals, but in the oath to keep his brothers alive in his heart. The crowd fell silent, their hearts tightening at the humility of a hero long forgotten. The Boise community, now awash in remorse, raised funds to refurbish Elias's dilapidated riverside rental room. But he refused, his gaze fixed on the shimmering water where his fallen comrades' memories still flowed. Instead, he proposed erecting a small riverside memorial engraved with the names of the 6 soldiers who perished in Nighthawk Firestorm. The monument, named Nighthawk's Rest, was carved from granite and stood silently amid the snow like an eternal candle. Each evening, veterans and their families gathered to light candles whose tiny flames danced on the river, comforting the souls at rest. Sarah, the waitress who once chased Elias away, stood beside him in the sunset glow, her eyes red with remorse and respect. She launched a charity fund to support homeless veterans, inspired by Elias's quiet courage, turning his own pain into a fire that warmed forgotten lives. Tommy, the 8-year-old boy Elias saved, led a group of local students in a storytelling project. With pencils and paper, the children recorded the Boise veterans' memories from battlefield tales to solitary days of wandering. This endeavor, like a living journal, ensured that no veteran would be buried in darkness. Elias, though never seeking glory, became a guiding torch for the next generation. Each night, he stood beside Nighthawk's Rest, clutching his Nighthawk 07 badge, his eyes seeming to meet his comrades' smiles in the candlelight. The Boise community, which once deemed him invisible, now regarded him with the reverence owed to a banner that never falls. But could the light from Nighthawk's Rest reach even farther, touching the heart of all America? Whom will Elias's story inspire next? The story of Elias Kane, from an old man dismissed as a drifter to an honored SEAL hero, did not stop in Boise but spread like a wind across snow-covered fields. The memorial, a granite block engraved with names that will never fade, became a symbol of silent courage, drawing veterans, families, and visitors from every corner. They come to lay flowers, light candles, and stand in silent reverence at sunset as if sensing the breath of the soldiers from Kandahar in 2003. Elias, with his worn coat and the scar that tells a silent tale, transformed a small corner of Boise into a fire that warms lost hearts. Nathan Cole, a former SEAL comrade now working as a military journalist, wrote the book Beneath the Snow Shadow, chronicling Elias's journey from the battlefields of Afghanistan to the lonely days by the Boise River. The book, with its cover depicting the shimmering Nighthawk 07 badge, became a bestseller, finding its place on the shelves of thousands of American homes, from small Idaho cottages to major city apartments. Nathan's prose, sharp as a blade, stirred memories in thousands of veterans, urging them to share their own stories on X, from long nights in Iraq to anonymous days spent wandering. Each story is a candle, illuminating the darkness of oblivion, just as Elias did for his brothers in arms. Tommy, the 8-year-old boy once rescued by Elias from smoke and flames, is now a high school student leading the volunteer team that maintains Nighthawk's Rest. With still clumsy hands, he clears snow from the memorial surface, ensuring the engraved names remain bright beneath the candlelight. Tommy and his classmates have launched a storytelling project to record the memories of local veterans in notebooks, an oath that no one will be left in the dark. Elias, who never sought glory, has become a guiding torch for the next generation. His eyes now hold a gentler light, as if he has found peace in the legacy of his comrades. Each evening, Elias still visits River's Edge Cafe, sitting in his familiar corner with a cup of tea in hand, but he is no longer an invisible ghost. Patrons greet him with respectful nods, as one would salute a soldier who never fell. One night, under the cafe's warm yellow lights, Tommy sat beside him, curiosity shining in his eyes. He asked whether Elias regretted remaining silent for 2 decades. Elias gazed out at the falling snow, offering a wistful smile like a desert breeze, and replied that he had no regrets because his brothers still lived within him, and now the whole world knew their names. The Nighthawk 07 badge gleamed at his collar like an eternal candle. The YouTube video closes with Elias standing beside Nighthawk's Rest, snow drifting softly, his badge shining in the candlelight. A stirring call to action rings out, warm yet powerful like a vow. Light a candle for the silent heroes in your life. Share this story on X, TikTok, or YouTube, and leave a comment. Have you ever met a hero like Elias? Tell us your story. Elias's tale, like the riverside candlelight, continues to burn, awaiting new hearts to be inspired. How will Elias's legacy inspire you? The story of Elias Kane, from an old man dismissed as a drifter to the SEAL hero of Nighthawk Firestorm, is a candle that lights the darkness of oblivion. Under Boise snow, he teaches us that honor does not lie in medals, but in the silent loyalty shown to those who fell. Nighthawk's rest and Elias's legacy remind us to look deeper at the invisible people around us. They may be unsung heroes. Let this story heal your heart and inspire you to honor the silent warriors in your life. We give thanks to Elias and the thousands of veterans who kept their oath even when the world turned its back. Light a candle for them by hitting like, subscribing to the channel, and sharing this video on X, TikTok, or YouTube. Have you ever met a hero like Elias? Leave a comment to share your story and tell us where you're watching from. Thank you for joining us, and let us keep the flame of courage burning ever bright.